The trade war heats up as President Trump turns up the pressure on China, a major trade partner for Nebraska. So what does that mean for the state's farmers and ranchers producing beef, corn, soybeans, and more?
That's about all they're talking about. They're going, did you see what the markets did today?
We visit with farmers as we look at the potential impacts. Plus, get historical context, just how unusual this situation is.
It is there, it is sweeping, it is very large in scale and scope.
Plus, we've got a planting decision to make and a unique team to make it with. Later, combining grazing with solar farms, it's time to grow. One-third of a Nebraska farmer's income from exports. Thanks for joining us on NTV News. I'm Steve White. As farmers prepare to put this seed in the ground, the growing season begins with unprecedented uncertainty.
We got beans on the back, corn on the front.
As planting season arrives, trade tension ratchets up. Farmers brace for impacts from the trade war.
That's about all they're talking about. They're going, did you see what the markets did today?
And Mark McHarg says it can change by the hour. Just days after President Trump announced sweeping tariffs, he put them on hold while doubling down on China. The Nebraska Farm Bureau president says that essentially closes a huge market.
If you had any question whether we want to trade with China, I think the answer would be no, we don't right now.
Nebraska is an export powerhouse, sending beef, corn, soybeans, and other products around the world.
We have built our ag system here in Nebraska on exports. So 30% of all ag commodities that we raise get exported somewhere.
Trade adds value to every bushel of grain and every pound of beef and pork that's sold.
All that money that we get from trade would be the profit side of the category, or to lose less. And so in a situation where we are now, where we're really at break-even levels on the row crop side of the category, we take trade out, and that's kind of what farmers are really nervous about. That takes them well below break-even.
As seed dealers make deliveries, growers have questions.
Should we be putting any soybeans in the ground?
Analysts tell us profitability has driven more acres of corn because if soybeans are shut out of China, that's trouble. McHarg says it'll be a year to watch for rallies and sell when you might make a little.
We need to be careful that it doesn't control our lives, because these types of things can really mentally get in there and disrupt your life.
Planting season is a fresh start, but it's left farmers wondering where this crop will go.
The future is still very, very bright for agriculture. We just truly are in some unprecedented times right now, and I think it's going to look very different in a couple months. I'm not going to say which way, but just hang on.
Farmers tell me they hope the president is working on new trade deals that will ease the burden of being shut out from the Chinese market.
More trade agreements with more countries, reducing barriers, that will be a good thing for trade.
Wall Street whipsaws as the trade war sparks financial fears. I'm Steve White. Nebraska agriculture braces for another hit from tariffs.
This is the biggest tariff action of our lifetime.
President Trump's tariffs will affect everyone.
It would be tough to escape any impact from this.
Jill O'Donnell watches from the International Trade Office at the University of Nebraska as President Donald Trump enacts tariffs against dozens of nations.
But it is there, it is sweeping, it is very large in scale and scope.
The institute is named for Clayton Yider, the Eustis native who championed free trade as part of the Reagan administration before Trump moved in a different direction.
It is such a significant shift from the posture of the United States for decades in leading the building of a system of rules for trade that did provide a lot of certainty and predictability for the businesses and the agricultural producers that do engage in trade.
O'Donnell says Yider helped create the World Trade Organization, opening markets for Nebraska beef and corn while bringing global goods like smartphones to consumers.
A consumer in rural Nebraska and in many other places too will feel some impact from this, given how sweeping these tariffs are, because they impact every item coming into the United States from every trading partner that we have.
farmers brace for impact.
Agriculture is the sector that gets hit very hard in terms of trade retaliation. That happened a few years ago and is quite possibly could happen again.
The feds paid farmers billions in the last trade war. The new tariffs bring more questions at a time farmers are struggling.
Creates a level of uncertainty that I think markets don't like, that I think weighs on the business sector, the ag sector as well.
O'Donnell calls tariffs a tax, one often passed along to consumers. She calls this a historic moment, one without precedent.
There will be impacts from this that are felt for years to come, and we will be continuing here in the Geider Institute to study that and to kind of translate that for any audience who wants it.
Pollinators play an important role in agriculture, but their numbers are on the decline. NTV's Jack Bartlett has our story.
Buzzing and busy bees are now bustling to survive as honeybee populations nationwide continue to decline.
About 50% of the colonies that we had in 2024 have not made it through the winter.
You kind of have your own insurance. The time of the year where you can grow by 300%, you try to as best you possibly can. And you understand that, well, I could lose 50% of my colonies this winter. And you figure that every year. So you figure up how many colonies do you want in April and May. So then you go into winter with twice as many colonies, which means instead of making a little extra honey the previous year, you make a few more bees, a few more colonies out of it. You make a few more splits, those kinds of things. Once you get over that 50%, it becomes very, very, very hard to recover your own losses.
Seymour mentioned that diseases and parasites contribute to this huge population decline, as well as
a lack of habitat, which creates a decline in nutrition.
This is now a pressing issue for commercial beekeepers around the state.
Some of the beekeepers around the state that go to farmers markets, they have seen these massive losses. You know, they've had 70, 80, 90% losses this year. So their ability to make honey this year is going to be exceptionally lower. They might make 20% of the honey they did the previous year. So that just means that they're either going to need to purchase honey from someone who does make more, or they're just going to run out. And you go to your farmer's market and then your local beekeeper just ran out of honey, right? So then you're going to have to find someplace else, or they're going to have to raise their prices just to get by there. So that's the local impact that people are going to see more than anything else.
However, Lance added that for local beekeepers and hobbyists, the impact is rather small, but did mention that as a nucleus colony supplier, he's already sold out of his supply for the year.
Because of the shortage of bees this year in general, we sell out earlier than expected. Usually in the year, we'll sell out in middle April to the 1st of May. But we sold out somewhat early. It was like middle March this year. We completely sold out.
Ron Seymour is encouraging everyone to do their part to help the honeybee population by planting native plants and flowers to create habitats for these insects to continue surviving and thriving. Reporting in studio, Jack Bartlett, NTV News.
I'm Deandra Kurtenbach for NTV News. Nebraska has already seen multiple wildfires this year. Nebraska Extension joined NTV News to discuss how to lessen your fuel load on your properties.
We're working with Nebraska Forest Service, we're working with Nebraska Game and Parks, Buffalo County Emergency Management, the Central Platte NRD, also working with the Kearney Volunteer Fire Department to offer education to those people in the Buffalo County area about how to make their property more wildfire ready.
The goal is simple: to help prevent fires. 2022 was the second worst year for wildfires. In March of 2025, 30,000 acres already had burned. Elizabeth Ekstrom spoke about how to lighten your fuel load.
So, removing any dead trees or dead limbs, or limbing up those trees that are not in a windbreak.
A benefit that Ekstrom mentioned was assistance for landowners.
There's also a lot of cost share opportunities for landowners out there to decrease that fuel load on their own property.
Nebraska Extension is planning a pair of backyard poultry seminars in central Nebraska next month, one in Kearney on May 2nd and the other in North Platte on May 3rd. The seminars aim to enhance disease management and sustainability practices for backyard poultry producers. Topics include common diseases, housing and feeding a flock, and the economics of egg production. Among the speakers are a pair of poultry specialists from Nebraska Extension, a 4-H youth development extension educator, and a local producer from Lexington. Guests are asked to register by April 28th, and there's a $25 fee, which comes with a meal for attendees.
Adding solar panels without taking good ground out of production. Can it be done? Coming up, we learn about a concept you could call solar grazing. Farmers, as we all know, wear a lot of hats. Agronomist, mechanic, marketer, and much more. A lot of that on display this time of year as seed goes in the ground. And once again, we're getting to taste that for ourselves, making some of those decisions as part of the university's TAPS contest. And as we look at all of that, we're considering global dynamics.
If you look at what's going on in South America and with everything else, like the acreage of soybeans planted this year already reduced, corn is increasing. I don't see that getting much more, but we never know. It's a volatile market.
When it comes to insurance, we're looking at revenue protection. And while our team has some experts in weeds and agronomy, insurance, not our strong suit.
I'm just curious. I don't know a lot about the insurance process, which is exactly why TAPS is great, because we get a chance to learn this stuff, or learn a little bit of it at least. What would this protect us against? And how would this work if we had to make a claim against it, for example?
Hail and fire would be two of the things I think would be included.
And if we choose revenue protection, then that protects us against the price also.
And we talked about seeding rates on soybeans with a desire to follow Nebraska Extension's guidelines that call for a little lower seeding rate than maybe some are used to. And I chimed in as well, asking about our goals and how profitability plays an impact.
We can go lower on the seeding rate than I think maybe what is common. So that 120 to 140 range, 140 is maybe still kind of on the higher end based on some of that research that's been done. I think they show very similar yields with 120 as they do 140.
I was just going to say, maybe it comes down to what's kind of our goal. Is our goal to live on the razor's edge and to push things in terms of profitability, or what's kind of our objective here? Maybe that makes a difference.
I would definitely say profitability should be a goal. And
yeah, I like shooting for profitability as well.
Yeah.
And I think if the university makes recommendations and is pushing growers to lower their seeding rates, I think we should live by that.
Our Grow Weather Outlook is next.
Well, the drought monitor releases past Thursday morning indicating some improvement across Nebraska and Kansas. Certainly nice to see that, but still, as you can see, we're still pretty dry here around the area. Looking closer now at the state of Kansas, where the no drought category has improved to about 16.25%, a 7.75% improvement compared to last week. This means abnormally dry about 83.75% of the state in that category. Moderate drought now stands about 55%, a 4.25% improvement compared to last week. No improvement, though, in the severe category, still sitting about 2.4% areas of southern Kansas in that category, but still no extreme or exceptional drought in Kansas. Moving north to Nebraska, no drought, now stands about 2.75%, a 1.5% improvement compared to last week. Abnormally dry, which means 97.25% in that category. Moderate drought now stands roughly 75 2/3%, roughly the same as last week, a slight improvement. Moderate drought. Of course, we have severe drought still standing at 33 2/3%. I should see a slight improvement in that category, about a 4.5% improvement there. Extreme drought actually improved slightly as well, just running over 6% of the state represented areas in the far northwest part of the panhandle, but still could certainly use some moisture out there. As far as temperatures go, the rest of the month looking pretty normal here for Nebraska. Most of Kansas, southwestern Kansas, maybe running slightly above average. Precipitation-wise, the rest of the month remains unchanged from last week, and again, pretty average precipitation totals for really all of Nebraska, most of Kansas, maybe some slightly above normal precipitation values there in the southeast part of Kansas. Next 3 months looking pretty normal for Nebraska as far as temperatures go, and of course you have slightly above average temperatures for most of Kansas, and of course precipitation wise this remains unchanged as well the next 3 months. Still looking at relatively dry conditions for most of Nebraska and Kansas, although the eastern parts of both states may be running closer to average for those precipitation values. Your Grow Almanac here for the week ahead. Normally see a high right around 63 this time of year. Normal low stands right around 39. As far as the highs go, running a little bit warmer at 70 for the week ahead. And that normal low running pretty close to normal, 40 degrees that week ahead average low. And here is your Grow week ahead. Looks pretty nice overall. Of course, cooling things down after kind of a somewhat warmer week, and the cold front again came through today. We'll be in the 60s for most of us for tomorrow. Again, those temperatures running in the 60s and 70s most days this next week here. Looking pretty dry as well. May have to watch late Wednesday for a chance of a few showers, but otherwise those look pretty dry. Of course, also keep in mind, of course, it is Good Friday. Of course, Easter weekend, next weekend. It kind of ties into our Grow proverb here as the wind blows on Easter Sunday from 8 a.m. to noon. The wind will be from that direction the next 40 days. I guess we'll have to see if that holds true. And if hopefully some southeast winds maybe bring us some rain into the region. Would be nice in the next 40 days after Easter Sunday. Well, that'll do it for your Grow weather report this week. Stay tuned next week when once again it'll be time to grow.
Adding solar panels without taking good ground out of production.
Cattle voltaics, which is combining cattle grazing with solar panels.
Can it be done? Coming up, we learn about a concept you could call solar grazing. Cattle turn grass into beef, but what if at the same time we could capture the sun's rays and produce electricity?
There's a lot of concern around solar and agricultural land and that loss of land, but dual use kind of offers a great solution because you can have your solar panels and your agricultural land use at the same time happening together. And so within that, a new idea that's been emerging is cattle voltaics, which is combining cattle grazing with solar panels so you can get all the economic and environmental benefits from solar panels while still using your land to graze your cattle.
You bring up a good point that I think a lot of people on the farm side of this, they look at it and go, well, gosh, I don't want to take ground out of production. Do you see this is kind of the best of both worlds?
Yes, so you can still have your cattle grazing on that, doing your rotational grazing that you typically would do, while also having those solar panels getting that energy generation, and then farmers would get that lease payment if they're doing it with a utility company.
Then in terms of having those structures there, are there any benefits in terms of we get hot days or the sun is bearing down on us? Does it provide any shade? Because I know there are producers who add shade structures to their cattle operations.
You called it right out. That's a big benefit for this, is that you can have that shade structure. So yeah, most farmers do add some sort of shade structure in the hot days in the summer, and the cattle typically go under it. And so why not have your shade structure generate that energy for you?
Then environmentally, I mean, what do you see as kind of the benefits to the land, the soil?
So with solar grazing, it can help enhance the agricultural land value because you have that native vegetation that can prevent topsoil loss and soil degradation. And then you have the cattle with their fertilization, moving it naturally. And so all of those combined help with runoff, reduce runoff, and get better soil.
Are we looking at farmers who are installing these to generate electricity for their own use, or is this more of something where they may be partnering with somebody else and are into a contract? Like, what does it kind of look like in those kind of terms?
Yeah, so it could happen either way. This fact sheet is a little bit more geared towards that partnership and contract with a developer. But farmers can invest in solar themselves and do a smaller amount of solar and then use that solar to help their own farm operations and help reduce those energy bills. But this fact sheet's a little bit more geared towards that contract with a utility company or a developer. It is a great opportunity for solar developers and farmers to work together and build that relationship.
Things ever change, and you can always check out our website, Nebraska.tv, for the latest. And we'll see you back here again next time as we see how agriculture makes Nebraska grow.